What is up, everybody? 40 the Broadway Saiyan here, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel, bringing you guys another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. In today's video, we're going to be taking a brief look at the next character on Global Opera Omnia, who is going to be getting an LD and burst weapon, and it's going to be none other than Final Fantasy VI's Kefka. But first, if you guys enjoy what you see on this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also turn on that notification bell. That way you guys are not missing out on future videos that I'll be putting out. And also, if you guys find the content that you see on this channel to be very helpful and useful, be sure to hit that like button, as it does help me out, and share this video to your friends and family that may enjoy Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. So Kefka is going to be getting his LD and burst weapon debut in conjunction with a heretic event. So the topics for this video is strictly going to be for Kefka's LD and burst weapons and what they do. Now, because those are the only topics that we're going to be covering, I am going to be presenting this video in a little bit of a different fashion compared to what you guys are used to. And if you guys like the way that I present this video, let me know in the comment section below, because I always love your feedback. And if you want me to stick to the way that I've been doing things before, then also let me know as well. But I do want to try something different with this video, especially for this particular information that we're covering, since it's not going to be too much information. Now, as always, I want to give a big thanks and shout out to Rem and the Dissidia DB for all the useful information found on that website, as well as to Macnull and the Dissidia Info, another fantastic website, as well as to the Opera Omnia Tracker for giving us a tool to be able to track our progress in Opera Omnia, as well as to the Tonberry Troop for the amount of time and effort they take to create those beautiful infographics summarizing these characters for us, as well as to the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles podcast, giving us a weekly podcast. And last but not least, I also want to say thank you to the rest of the other content creators and streamers for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. This community has grown so much, and all the efforts that we put together to help the community out to step up their game and, help decide on what banners to pull for or not. It's really just a treat to see this community grow. So thank you to all of you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Kefka's LD and burst debut. Alright guys, here we are. We're going to go ahead and talk about Kefka's LD and burst weapons. Now, I did say that the presentation for this video is going to be a little different, so I want to start it off with just some gameplay right off the bat. Since we're not going to talk about too many topics, I will be touching up on the banners too, so don't worry, I will be covering that. But if you guys are unfamiliar with Kefka, for those of you that might be newer players, his role in the game is being a heavy debuffer that also focuses on some damage that he deals from his skills. So he's there to apply a bunch of debuffs to the enemy targets, which allows you to debilitate them, lower their defenses, their attack, their speed. He also has that HP attack silence as well as the blind. And what this does is it provides offensive utility for your party members to be able to really deal as much damage as possible. So that is going to be Kefka's role, with damage being his secondary role. Now, when you add the LD weapon into the mix, he's going to get access to a 12-hit Magic Brave plus HP attack. Now, there is going to be splash damage to non-targets, and if you do limit break this weapon, the splash damage is increased. Now, just like with any other LD weapon, he does get a permanent stat increase with the passive that you unlock, and this one is going to be for his attack, which helps him out. At full limit break, he's going to get 4 uses of this LD ability, and what this does is not only does it deliver a lot of damage, but it also extends any existing buffs that Kefka inflicts by 1 turn, and any existing debuffs that Kefka has already inflicted will become framed debuffs. And that is extremely powerful because, as we know, framed debuffs can only be removed if they are cleansed. They cannot be pushed off. So if you're up against a boss fight where they like to apply a bunch of buffs to themselves, if Kefka slapped on that LD effect from all the different debuffs that he applies, they're going to be shut down. Then there's nothing they can virtually do to be able to deal with all these different debuffs. So Kefka's LD weapon does that. And then afterwards, when we go into his burst, what his burst does is it delivers another very powerful magic brave plus HP attack. This time the damage is going to be 100% HP damage across all targets. And, it has the same characteristics as other burst or finish bursts where they have that, increased brave damage, maximum brave damage limit, increase maximum HP damage limit. And then the burst effect for this one is, anytime anytime you attack with a party member, they're going to be dealing increased HP damage to that target, depending on the amount of debuffs that are active on that target. So the more debuffs active on the target, the more damage your entire party deals to benefit from Kefka's burst effect. Now, as far as his rotation goes, when you actually play him, you generally do not want to start off with the LD, because the reason why is you want to inflict the debuffs that he has from his skill 1 and his skill 2. So if we're going to go start off with his skill 2 right over here, which is Light of Judgment. So Light of Judgment is going to be inflicting 3 different debuffs, which is going to be attack down, speed down, and defense down. And then right after that, as you can see right here, we're going to go ahead and use his LD ability. So once we use his LD ability, he's going to extend the duration of those buffs by 1 turn that he inflicts. And then afterwards, he is going to be turning them into frame. Now, as we could see right there, they were cleansed. So that is one way that enemy targets have a way to remove these buffs. But in a nutshell, that's what makes Kefka's LD ability so powerful, because he has a way to enframe his debuffs, preventing them from being pushed off. And if you are fighting against enemies that like to buff themselves, it's really hampers their capabilities of being able to add different buffs into their buff debuff slot. Now, we also do have access to his Trine. You guys know this skill. It is super powerful because what it does is it applies HP attack silence. It also applies blind, which can come really in clutch if you know you're about to encounter a very powerful, let's say an AoE brave plus HP attack that is going to be taking out your party member. So Trine looks like this for those of you that are unfamiliar with it. Now, we didn't get the actually we did get the debuff off. There it is. Okay, cool. All right, so now that we have that in check, we're gonna go ahead and use his EX ability. So his EX ability applies Sneering Clown. Again, that's the frame debuff that has attack, defense, and speed down rolled into one, and it also has the sap effect, which is very, very powerful. And not to mention, if you have Kefka's EX weapon fully realized, what that does is it automatically drops Sneering Clown on all enemies at the start of the battle. So that is something that you want to keep in mind and take note of. So now that we've seen those skills in action, let's just go ahead and use his burst so we can see it in action. All right, so now that we're doing his burst, we're going to go ahead and use, let's go ahead and use this. Okay. So we have those debuffs on. We have these on. Now we're going to go ahead and use his LD because we're going to go ahead and frame them up. So as you can see right there, they have been extended by 1 turn and they are now framed. So think about this. We've just framed HP attack, silence, and blind, and they've been extended by a turn. Just think about that. That's crazy, right? If you're expecting an HP attack, you've pretty much just shut down that enemy target. And then afterwards, we'll go right into his EX. Now, unfortunately, because this boss already has a framed buff active, we won't get that Sneering Clown, but we just wanted to see the animation anyways. But if you manage to get all 6 of these debuffs off, very, very powerful. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go into this command, which is his Meteor Plus, something that he gets from realizing his EX weapon. And then finally, this is going to be his Finish Burst. Again, does a ton of damage, 100% AoE HP damage, and the burst effect is every party member deals more and more HP damage depending on the amount of debuffs that they have. So that is going to be that. All right. So that's a little bit of a let's play demonstration there on Kefka. And there's a few things that I do want to go over while we're still doing this gameplay here. So as far as party members that you want to use with Kefka, he's a bit tricky to pair up with another debuffer because of the fact now he has a capability of framing his own debuffs. So running him with somebody like a mid-Italian can be really tricky. Even if you're using that friend at mid-Italian specifically for turn deletion, you want to keep in mind that these debuffs can, having another debuffer with Kefka, he doesn't like to play well with other debuffers. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be running him. Now, characters that I do recommend to run with him that can work very well with, him debilitating enemies are characters such as, let me go ahead and... So characters such as Garland, for example, because Garland's LD effect already lowers speed, and because it's not in the form of a debuff, it's in the form of an effect that actually works really well with Kefka. Or a character such as Sephiroth too. Let's get Sephiroth here. Could work very well. So let's get Sephiroth. So Sephiroth right over here. He has his Genova stacks, which also lowers speed, so that could be an idea that you could use there if you want to run like a fully offensive team. Of course, you don't want to. We don't have any healers on this party, but if you're looking for like characters that provide some sort of like debilitating effect, but without having to take up a debuff slot, because Kefka just does that all on his own, those are characters that I would personally recommend. But anyways, that is going to be a little bit about party members, like offensive party members that could work really well with Kefka. Now, as far as the banner goes, so Kefka is going to be featured on 2 different banners. His burst and LD will be on both of them. One banner is going to have his gear. It's also going to have Aerith, and it's also going to have Shadow. That banner between the 2 is probably the better one because the other one has Kefka's burst and LD, but the other characters featured on it are Freya, Seymour, and Lise. Lise is probably the most underwhelming character in the 6 synergy characters for this heretic. So unless you're a fan of that character and you want to chase after Kefka's LD specifically on that, then the one that I would definitely go for would be the one with Aerith and Shadow, and you also have a chance to get Kefka's EX weapon there. Shadow is still a pretty strong, range damage dealer. He does have that high evasion. He has that counter every time he dodges an attack. While he may be a little bit on, approaching the dated side of DPS, if you're looking for a good range damage dealer with some pretty good longevity and also some pretty, decent survivability because of the way that his kit functions with his evasion, then he's a pretty good slot-in character for that. And then Aerith is a pretty fantastic support with a very fast charging EX ability. She can heal you. She has that really powerful skill too. So, and also her really powerful HP attack command, provided that you have her kit fully built up and everything like that. So she's a pretty good character. Now, as far as like Seymour and Freya's still pretty good in my opinion. I think Freya, provides your party with that last stand effect. And she also has battery. She has healing. She's not bad of a character. And Seymour, to be honest, I think he's underrated. He can actually work decently with Kefka. If Kefka's primary role is there to debuff you and frame, and then afterwards Seymour can take advantage of being able to deal more damage on debuff targets. So depending on the party comp, Seymour can be an underrated character, but I know that some people see him as a little bit underwhelming, but depending on your party comps, he's pretty decent character, provided that you're pairing him up with, the correct party setup and things like that. So again, as far as the banners go, I personally recommend, if you are going to be going after Kefka's gear, to go after the LD weapon first. If recommended on the banner with Aerith and Shadow. And then if you pull on the LD there, I would wait, honestly, to pull for his burst on the Strago banner, because he's also going to have the burst featured on the Emperor Lost Chapters banner. For me, if you ask me, between the Emperor Lost Chapters banner and the Strago banner, I think the Strago banner is actually the superior banner, because you also get Realm there, who Realm gets her rework there, and her crazy EX realization, who Realm is one of those budget Lufenia champions that I've told you guys about, who does really well in Lufenia, and she only goes all the way up until an EX+. And then afterwards, Strago is a brand new character who has like this double cast kind of a mechanic with his LD. Very strong. Emperor is also pretty good, having his LD ability as well. Like, he's no slouch. It's just that his banner mates are not necessarily the most optimum at this point. We have Gilgamesh, and then afterwards we have Firion, who Firion is okay. He could heal you, he could battery you, and things like that. But I know most of you who like Firion are waiting for the rest of Firion's gear when his LD and burst come out. So me personally, if I were to go for Kefka's gear fully, I would go for the LD on the first 2 banners. And then once I get that, I would wait specifically for the Strago banner to get his burst. But of course, if Kefka is your favorite, I'm looking at you, Square Enix Joshua, Josepher, and Yusefka, then if you decide to go hard for the first 2 banners it's featured on, then he's your favorite, you know, all about having fun, right? So that is going to be my thoughts as far as the banner goes. But Kefka does become a very powerful debuffer. Now he has the ability to frame his debuffs, and he also has a pretty cool burst ability. I personally think that the LD weapon is more than enough for him, but if you guys want his burst, it does have a really powerful effect. One more thing that I want to alert you guys to. So later on down the line, and I'm gonna actually show you the particular stage that I'm talking about here. So Act 3, when we get Act 3 in Global, okay, I believe it's this one. There is a particular Lufenia that is regarded as one of the more frustrating ones, which is, I believe it's this one. Yes, this one. Okay, so this boss right here, this Medusa, these pair of Medusa heads frequently HP attack you. And if you have Kefka, even with just if you have it with just his LD ability, being able to extend and frame that HP attack silence, the fight pretty much becomes a staring contest, provided that you have some other strong units with Kefka. But I took Kefka for this particular Lufenia for this Act 3 Chapter 1, and it really was a lifesaver to take Kefka, because being able to frame that HP attack silence as well as the blind, and then afterwards extend the turns, it made this Lufenia so much more manageable. So just a little bit of a, you know, a tip there for like a future fight for, you know, the Global has yet to see, but Kefka later down the line is actually really good for that fight. So just a little bit of you know, future sight that I wanted to give you guys for this video. But thank you guys again for watching. I appreciate you guys, you know, sticking around and taking the time to watch this. If you guys like this format, it's a little bit more casual, I show you, you know, a little bit more gameplay, let me know in the comment section below, and maybe I'll try to keep up this format a little bit more often, or rotate it with the way that I usually do things. But again, thank you guys again for watching. Thank you for all the support. Stay tuned for the next video, and mahal, guys.